Hello everyone. Welcome to Rhonda's Ruminations on Reading. We are reading Westerns today. Please enjoy the video. Please make sure to like and subscribe. This is YouTube, and they like it when you like and subscribe. Thank you.
He motioned for a refill of our tankards. We shall sail south almost to the land of the Spanish men, then north along the coast, trading wherever possible. After that to some islands off the North Coast, the fishermen of summer villages to dry and smoke their fish. There we will refit and buy stores. Tempany hoisted his glass, looking from under bushy grey brows at him. Lad, have you thought that there's more to Genister's hatred of you than happened in Stamford? Why should there be? We never met before. What do you think? What do you think of the book? Hmm? Yeah? This is the first one in the sackets. You like Louis L'Amour books? You like to eat them? Well, don't eat it, okay?
Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I have a fun little reading vlog that I'm going to be working on over the next few months. As you can see behind me, I have a large stack of old books. These are all the Louis L'Amour cowboy fiction that I had collected over the years. Back when I was in high school, I was really into reading Louis L'Amour's Westerns. I never really read a lot of other authors, but I read a lot of Louis L'Amour. And so I ended up buying a whole pile of them when I was younger. And it has been years since I read them. Probably 25 years since I last read one. So I thought it'd be fun, because I'm trying to clean out my shelves, I thought it'd be fun to go through, read a bunch of them, rank them in order of how good they are, how well they survive the test of time. We'll see. I'm not too sure how that's going to go, but also just ranking them as, which ones I liked, and then I can determine which ones I actually want to save. So what I've done is this stack here is standalones, and don't worry about my bruise. I was trimming hooves on a horse, and he got me with the part of his hoof there. Anyway, this is standalones. This here is 15 of the 17 in the Sackett series. I'm missing 2 of them, but I do have 15 of them. And then this stack here is a little bit of other series. So there was a duology here. This had, I think the series had about 7 in it, and I think I have 6 or something like that. And then there's another one that I have a couple in. But I thought I would just kind of set those in their own section. And what I've done is I have all of the books on papers in here. And for the series is I put in 15 papers that say Sackett's, and I put in, 2 papers that say Bowdry. And then that way I can just read the first one in the series when I pick it. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and I'm going to pick a book, and then I'm going to read that particular book, and I will set these up in an order from highest to lowest as to how I feel about them. So I'm going to just stir up my little container here, and without looking, I'm going to pick one. And I got Talon and Chantry. So that is one of the series. So I believe the first one in that series is this one here called Borden Chantry. So I am going to read that one, and I will let you know my thoughts. And I'm going to, basically what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through, I'm going to read each book, give you my thoughts on them, place them in the order, and then at the end we'll discuss in more detail the entire collection that I have. So let's get started. I finished the first of the Louis L'Amour books. So this one was Borden Chantry. And this book is about a young guy who becomes the marshal of this town, kind of because he needs a job after his ranch goes under. So he becomes the marshal of this town, and in the first few pages of the book, a guy is found murdered in the street. And so he has to try and figure out who did it, and there ends up being some more killings. And this was kind of a fun one to start with for me, because this one was actually a bit of a mystery. And I quite enjoyed it. It was one that I actually hadn't read before of all the Louis L'Amour books that I had, or at least I don't remember reading it. I read a lot of them in high school, so it was a good one. I did figure out who the villain was just shortly before the main character did, so that wasn't too bad. Overall, I gave this one a 6.86 in the Cawpile rating, so that's going to put it kind of in the middle section. I didn't want to rate anything too high or too low yet, because I need to have room for all these other books here. So I gave that one a 6.86, and it was a very strong start. And there wasn't anything that bothered me in it. It was a really good story. The only thing I found was that the characters were a little bit two-dimensional. The main character was, you got a little bit more into his head and his backstory and everything, but the other characters were a little two-dimensional, so that kind of brought it down a little bit. But so that one was 6.86. So now I'm going to pick my next one out of this little container. Fold it off. Okay, which one am I going to try next? This one is The Man from Skibbereen. Right here, it is a standalone. So that is this one here, and I'm going to give that a read through, and then I'll tell you what it was about and what my rating is. Finished another one. So this one that I read this time was The Man from Skibbereen. And this book follows Crispin Mayo. He is a guy who has just come to the US from Ireland. And he's setting out west to work on the railroad. And on his way, he ends up getting left at a telegraph station on the track, and it's just kind of out in the middle of nowhere. Then he ends up meeting this daughter of a colonel, and the train that they're on gets attacked by renegades, and the colonel gets kidnapped, and the daughter asks him for help. So he ends up going out there to try and find her father. And overall, I really didn't enjoy this one very much. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Overall, the story itself wasn't bad, and I liked the female character. She wasn't a damsel in distress. She stood up for herself and held her own pretty good. But what I found with this one, and I'm not 100% sure why, but I found that I didn't care for the writing very much. It was very kind of from a overhead view of everything. You were never really strongly in anybody's head. And so I didn't feel any connection to any of the characters in this one. So that one I ended up giving a 3.14 on Cawpile. So that puts it below this one. So this is my order so far for these ones. And I'm going to pick another one and see what I get. So here's my little container. Let's reach in here and stir it up. And I have The Quick and the Dead. This one should be interesting because the movie that was based on this one, just a sec, I'll grab it here. Okay, yes, The Quick and the Dead. So there was a movie based on this one back in the 90s with Sam Elliott as the main character, and it was one of my mom's and I favorite. I'm having trouble speaking tonight. And it was one of my mom's and my favorite movies. We used to watch Westerns all the time when I was in high school. My mom and I, we loved the Sacketts, the Quick and the Dead, and the Shadow Riders based off Louis L'Amour books. And, but our favorite was one called Silverado, which wasn't based off of a book, but it was a really, really fun one. So, but The Quick and the Dead was one of my mom's and my favorite movies that we watched when I was a kid. So I'm curious to see what that one's like. I've never actually read the book, so I will read that and let you know what I think. I finished reading The Quick and the Dead by Louis L'Amour, and this one, I gave it a 4.29 on the Cawpile rating scale. So I'll tell you where that fits in with the other ones after I tell you about it. So this one is I was actually quite looking forward to this one because I used to love the movie with Sam Elliott back in the day. Back when I was in high school, my mom and I used to watch it, and I enjoyed the movie. What this story is about is a man and his wife, Duncan and Susanna McCaskill, and their young boy, and they are headed west in a covered wagon, and they happen to have a guy stop by their camp the one night for coffee, and he helps them out because their horses have been stolen by these people in this little town that they had just gone through, and it's a really bad outfit, and they're looking to kill him and steal his wife and all that sort of badness. So the guy's name is Con Valian. He's the main Western character. And so then he starts helping them, off and on throughout this adventure as they go to try and find the place where they're going to live. And I kind of remember this from the movie. The movie didn't follow the book like 100%, but I do remember from the movie thinking that Valiant's character was kind of irritating because he was constantly coming on to Susanna. And it was even worse in the book, I think. Well, I don't know if I'd say it was worse in the book, because in the book, Susanna was more, she was happy that he was helping them, but she was more, not accepting his advances sort of thing. But I mean, for my modern sensibilities, he came across as someone who, okay, she's married. She's told you she's happily married, so like quit coming on to her. So that was kind of annoying to me. And so I didn't really like his character until probably about 2/3 of the way through. Then his character started to grow on me a little bit more. And I started to like him, but he was kind of like, just like this, I don't know. I didn't care for his character as much as I thought I would. And, but like overall the action and stuff was pretty good. I did find a few bits of it, where the logic didn't quite mesh in my brain as to how things would have gone. But overall it was an okay one. Now let's just quickly, before I continue with going on about these, I just realized I left that sitting there. Before I continue going on about the books, let's talk a little bit about the elephant in the room when it comes to reading old Westerns. And that is the treatment of the Native Americans at the time. And Louis L'Amour is one of the better ones I've found. I tend to give it a lot more leeway for things like that, for issues of race and issues of sexism and that sort of thing in historical fiction, because it's describing a time period and that's how people actually thought in that time period. But the one thing I do appreciate about Louis L'Amour is, even though women are treated as, the weaker sex and all that sort of thing, and there is some racism towards the Native Americans, he doesn't treat it so much as that it's okay. Like, he does have Valiant say a few times in here that that the Indians just do things different than we do. It's not that they're wrong, it's just that it's different, kind of thing. So he does say that a few times in there, but I do find that there is that bit of racism, especially in the way the language is used, the terms that are used for the Native Americans and First Nations people. So, but it being that it is historical fiction, that is what they would have actually said back then. So that's where I have a little bit more leeway with historical fiction, but I'm still not super comfortable with it. But you're going to find that in any of these old Westerns. So if you're going to read them, you are going to have to be prepared for that. I do like the fact that with the women, generally, even though he treats them as, kind of the weaker sex and, needing to be protected and everything, he does treat them with respect. As an author, he really does treat them with respect. So that I like. I just, in this one in particular, that came up because I was getting really irritated with the main character for the way that he was constantly saying things that kind of like needle Susanna and her husband and kind of coming on to her. And it's like, in case she told you no means no, so anyways, but so I had Borden Chantry was sitting at the top at 6.86 and The Man from Skibbereen was at 3.14. So The Quick and the Dead will fit right in the middle of them there at 4.29. So that means that my stack so far is looking like this. So that's the stack so far. So I am going to pick another one from my many books here. So let's see what I get this time. I think I'm going to read 5 for each vlog because I have about 40 of them here, so that's a lot. It's going to take me a while to go through all of them. I got a Sackett book. Okay, so this is interesting. So the first Sackett book is this one here. Is that the first one? Yeah, Sackett's Land. So this is the first Sackett book. I guess I could have just looked at it. It says number 1 on it. Although some of the later ones aren't in the correct order on the way it says here as to where it says online. So it all depends because there was some crossover. So the Sackett's is his most well-known series. There's like 17 books in it. And it's about a family. These first few, I think, this one starts with them coming over from England to America. And then, so that would be probably in like the early 1800s or late 1700s. I'm not 100% sure when it's set. And then as it moves through, like the majority of the books are based in kind of that mid to late 1800s period. And it's about all the different brothers and everything. So I'm going to read that one and I will let you know what I think of it. I finished this one here. It's the first one in the Sackett series, Sackett's Land. And this one was written in 1974, and it is the beginning of the Sackett series, which actually has 17 books in it. And this book, you're following Barnabas Sackett. It takes place in 1599. And Barnabas is a fen man in England. So he lives in the fens and makes his living out of that. And he ends up crossing a gentleman named Rupert Genester. And Genester gets on his tail, so he has to basically for his life. And he ends up deciding that he's going to go on a ship to America. He wants to trade. He built up some goods and he wants to go and trade in America and then come back to England to make his fortune. When he gets to America, he discovers that he loves the land and so he wants to go back. There's some really fun stuff in this book. There's lots of sea voyage parts, which has always been something that I enjoy. I've read, the Horatio Hornblower books and the Ramage books by Dudley Pope, and I really like that seafaring stuff. So that was fun in this book. And then I really liked the female character, the female main lead. She was very she wasn't a wilting flower in any way. She was very brave and bold, and I really enjoyed her. And I thought that he did a really good job in this one, other than, of course, some of the language, which was typical of the time for the Native American people. He did a good job of treating them with respect, I thought, in this book. And so overall, I really did enjoy this one a lot. So it actually made it to the top of my list, which I ended up giving this one a 7.43 on the Cawpile rating. So that puts it at the very top of the ones that I've read so far. So this is the order that they're in right now. So yeah, I really enjoyed his first Sackett book, and I really want to read more of them because I know that series and that family was kind of his, I guess you would call it kind of like his bread and butter characters. They were his real passion for those characters. And so that definitely, I really enjoyed the way that Barnabas was written. And the only thing that I would say with that book is that I would have loved it to be about 200 pages longer. I know because it's a Western, they're all in that under 200 page range. And so he would have been limited by that for the genre that he was going for. But this could have easily been a 400 page historical fiction novel. And I would have liked that, and it would have gotten a higher rating from me if it had been longer, because I felt like a lot of the side characters weren't really developed very well. And if he had, 200 more pages, he could have really developed the side characters well. And so then the relationship between Barnabas and some of these side characters wouldn't have seemed so quick, because I found that there was cases where he was trusting people a little too quickly, and he just didn't, it kind of stretched the limits of belief a little bit that he would trust somebody that quickly, because he does tend to be a very cautious sort of person. So cautious, but brave and full of action. So, but that was the only thing, is this could definitely have been a 400 page historical fiction easily. So I'm going to go ahead and pick my next one. So we will just go through all of these, and we will grab, what is this one? The Lonesome Gods. That one I'm really looking forward to reading. Let me just grab it here. My little bit sun-bleached copy. So, The Lonesome Gods. This was always one of my all-time favorite Louis L'Amour books, and this was kind of his big historical fiction epic, as opposed to how the other ones were Westerns. And again, like I say, you can develop a lot more characters in, how many pages is this one? 450 pages. So I'm really looking forward to reading this one, because I remember really liking this one when I was in high school. It was one of my top 2 Louis L'Amour books. And I will let you know more about it as I read it and when I finish it. I am here with an update on the 5th Louis L'Amour book that I've been reading for this vlog. This one was The Lonesome Gods. It's his longest book and really a historical epic as opposed to a Western. It's, of course, set in the West, but it is more of a historical fiction book. And this one actually gets 5 stars from me. This one was my favorite when I was younger, and it has remained my favorite after reading it again. This book, I'll tell you about what it's about first. It follows a young boy named Johannes Verne. And at the beginning of the book, he's only 6 years old. And he and his father are joining a solitary wagon that is heading across the desert to California. There are 2 women and 2 other men who have paid for passage on this wagon. It's dangerous for them to go just a solitary wagon, but they're going to be moving at night and, all those sorts of things. And then there's 2 guards that are going with them to protect them, and the wagon driver. And as the story gets on, you discover that Johannes' father, Zachary Verne, is in very, very poor health. He has consumption, which it was tuberculosis. And so he is taking Johannes back to California where his grandparents, or his grandfather lives, because he needs to try and find somewhere for him to be when he dies. So the major issue there is that you learn fairly quickly that Zachary Verne married Johannes's mother, Consuelo, against the will of her father, his name is Don Isidro, and he was a very wealthy, very proud Don from Spain who had come to America. And so he absolutely forbade the marriage. They ran off together. And then for years and years and years, Don Isidro and his men actually pursued them. They hid in the desert. And then Don Isidro pursued them all over the country, basically. And then before the story started, Johannes's mother had passed away from consumption, and then his father had it now. And so he's taking him back there in hopes that Don Isidro will accept the fact that this is his grandson and will take him in. Very quickly on, you learn that Don Isidro has not in any way forgiven Zachary Verne and is planning on killing Johannes. So that's kind of the setup for the story, and you learn throughout this. The thing I find super interesting about this book is that the character of Zachary Verne, who is only around for about the first section of the book here, but he is extremely well read and knows all this historical stuff. He was a sailor on a ship and has been to Asia and all that sort of thing. And so he's extremely well read, and he reads books to Johannes all the time, even though he's very young. And so Johannes grows up reading and wanting to learn more and more, and he reads things like Homer, and he reads things, like the Greek, all the old Greek stuff, and so he's very, very educated that way. And so it makes for a really interesting character in contrast with the West, and how so many people back in that day had very little education. So it makes quite a contrast. And Johannes grows up to become a really, really unique character. I really enjoy his character. He's very thoughtful. This book is actually quite a slow read. That's why it took me so long. I started it actually at the beginning of July. And it's quite a slow read because it's very deep in a lot of places, and there's a lot of his thoughts and the things that he's considering, and philosophy and that sort of stuff in it. But the story itself is also, the plot is also really good. So, but the other thing that I really like about this is I really like the one female character. Her name is Miss Nesselrode, and she is one of the women who comes on the wagon train. Nobody knows anything really about her other than that, she's single and she's coming to California. And I love her character because she is so smart and so, she knows how to play the system of the world back in that time. So when she gets to California, she starts doing all these business deals and everything, but she uses the two guys who had gone with the wagon as protectors or whatever. They stay there in Los Angeles with her. This is at the time when Los Angeles was a tiny, tiny little town, and it's starting to grow, sort of thing. But she actually uses them to make all her deals. She's the brains behind the whole operation, and she uses them to make all her deals because at that time, nobody would have taken a woman seriously. But she's constantly listening and paying attention to everything going on around her. So she's so smart and so business savvy. And I really love her character. She's just extremely unique and very well written. I really enjoyed her. And so, yeah, throughout the book, one of the major themes that I loved is this idea that there were people who even predated the existing Native Americans who would have had their own gods and everything. They call, in the book, the Native Americans call them the Old Ones. And Johannes ends up spending some time growing up with the Coela tribe. And so he learns quite a bit about the Old Ones, and there's paths in the desert that the Coelas say were made by the Old Ones. And it's just it's such a interesting concept because he talks quite a bit because his father told him about them. And he talks quite a bit about how these old gods that would have been worshipped by the old ones and they no longer have worshippers, but you can still feel them out there in the desert. And he calls them the lonesome gods. And so that part is just a really unique, interesting concept that I love in this book. The other thing that I really like about this book is the writing itself. It is beautifully written, and I really, really wish Louis L'Amour had written more of these epic historical fiction books instead of confining himself to Westerns. I mean, obviously that must have been what he wanted to do, but he was such a good writer for a book of this length where he could really get poetic about things. And like, I actually marked a few places in here and highlighted them. This is one of the parts where his father is talking about, telling him about the lonesome gods. And he says, each people has its gods or the spirits in which they believe. It may be their God is the same as ours, only clothed in different stories, different ideas. But a God can only be strong, Hannes, if he's worshipped. And the gods of those ancient people are lonesome gods now. They're out there in the desert and mountains, and perhaps their strength has waned because nobody lights fires on their altars anymore. But they are there, and sometimes I think they know me and remember me. I love that. And let's see. There was another one here further on that I really liked. He's talking about the desert and everything, and he says, out there where the silent gods awaited, eyes hollow with loneliness for the worshippers they no longer had. Out there under the sky, under the stars by night, they waited for the click of a stone thrown upon a pile, for arms lifted in prayer. Men need their gods, but did not the gods also need men? So that was really interesting. I liked because Johannes has done so much reading and everything. There's a few comments about that, but one of them is that reading had done that for me, that even when I disapproved of what my grandfather had done, I could understand him. It made his crimes no less, but left me with a clearer view. And I find myself that when I read, that, you know, you get a clearer view of other people and their motivations and everything. You don't necessarily agree with them, but you get that feeling. And then I just wanted to read this part because I thought it was just a piece of absolutely beautiful writing. It's towards the end of the book, but it doesn't give anything away. It's more philosophical. So it says, it is all very well to say that man is only a casual whim in a mindless universe, that he too will pass. We understand that, but disregard it as we must. Man to himself is the all, the sum and the total. However much he may seem a fragment, a chance object, a bit of flotsam on the waves of time, he is to himself the beginning and the end, and this is just. This is how it must be for him to survive. Man must deal with himself. It is his reality he must face each morning when he rises. It is his world with which he must deal. Perhaps his end is only years away, or even months, yet he cannot more than acknowledge that, for it is the now with which he must deal, unless, like a spoiled child, he is to fall on his face and beat his fists against the earth. He must be, he must move, he must create. If man is to vanish from the earth, let him vanish in the moment of creation, when he is creating something new, opening a path to the tomorrow he may never see. It is man's nature to reach out, to grasp for the tangible on the way to the intangible. We have hedged ourselves round with law, for we know that if man is to survive, it must be through cooperative effort. And it's such beautiful writing. I love that description there where I love the phrase, however much he may seem a fragment, a chance object, a bit of flotsam on the waves of time. That is so poetic. So this to me is a really good example of what Louis L'Amour could definitely write, like when he took the time to write a book that was 450 pages long instead of under 200 for a Western. So anyways, that book then gets 5 stars from me, which gives it a compile rating of 9. So I'm just going to open my book here and tell you, because this will be the end of this vlog, and then I'll start reading some more for the next one. But I've got, so the ranking of these, Lonesome Gods got 9. Sackett's Land, which was the one about Barnabas Sackett, that one got 7.43. Then I had Borden Chantry, which was 6.86 on my compile scale. Then The Quick and the Dead, which I gave a 4.29 out of 10. And then The Man from Skibbereen, which I gave a 3.14 out of 10. So I'll put up on the screen just a summary of all of those. But this is the order in which I would put these particular books for my ratings of them. So that's the first 5 that I've read. And I will be continuing on with reading more of the 40-some that I have. And I will come and see you again with another vlog when I get another 5 written. Let me know if you've read any of Louis L'Amour's books and what your favorite was. And in particular, I'm curious if you have read The Lonesome Gods, because this, like I say, has always been one of my favorite books from the time I was a teenager. That was when I read most of my Louis L'Amour's, was when I was a teenager. So I'm curious to what other people think of that different type of writing that he did in that book. So I will see you guys soon on my next vlog. Bye.
No sense of property, not as we have. In a village, each man uses what he needs. When they see something they want. You can get over here. Puddy! We're supposed to be reading together. You just want a bum scratch, don't you?